What was that one dude's name again?
What?
What's that one dude's name?
Gatsby?
Right.
All right, guys. Ready to do this thing? What the heck?
You got all dressed up.
Yeah, I got all dressed up. You told me to get all dressed up.
No, you said that we should get all dressed up. I don't want to wear a bow tie.
Hey guys, let's do this. Zach, Izzy, I guess it's just Ben. Douchebag.
You are a son of a...
I will tell you God's truth. God's truth about myself. I am the son of some very wealthy people. Sadly, they're all dead now. I lived in all the capitals of Europe, collecting jewels, hunting big game, painting a little. Then came the war, old sport. Every allied government gave me a decoration.
Major J. Gatsby for valor extraordinary.
That's right.
Could it all be true? Gatsby.
Gatsby's green light has been brought to life in the latest visual orgy from Baz Luhrman. Carey Mulligan is Daisy Buchanan, Tobey Maguire is Nick Carraway, and Leonardo DiCaprio is the man himself in The Great Gatsby. Full of 3D and vibrant colors, this movie is a huge undertaking for a book that's not a very big one, but one of most people's favorites from their high school English classes. Ben, how did you like the adaptation of The Great Gatsby?
Well, Zach, I have to say, it was more so the okay, I guess, Gatsby. Wow.
What didn't really work for you?
You know, a lot of people will say that they didn't like the book in high school, at least from my experience. But it's not that I didn't like the book. I like the book. I like F. Scott Fitzgerald.
I did too.
But it's like the characters for me, were annoying. Like, I'm not a big fan of Jay Gatsby and his motivations for doing things. But the story that he's involved in is great. And, I think Baz Luhrman did a good job in showing the grandeur of the time period. He kind of let me down in a few aspects, but, in the whole grandeur of everything, I don't know, that's the thing, right?
Sure.
If you need to be more pretentious about it, yes.
Right? Right. In the big party scenes especially was where he shined. Similar to Moulin Rouge and the scenes in, towards the beginning where it was all happy and fun. But then, I started to lose interest as it went on.
Izzy, you also had a pretty positive response to most of the movie, right?
Yes, I did. In regards to when I had to read it in high school, I was pretty neutral about it, even though the rest of my class was very enthusiastic. They thought it was the greatest thing they had ever read. I was pretty neutral. But then going into the movie, I was pretty neutral about it. But then I was watching it and I felt like I understood more of it. Because Baz Luhrmann, his style is very colorful. And a lot of the book involved colors. So I feel like that just really, I was watching the movie and I understood.
Yeah, I mean, I'll agree. It captured the colorfulness and the grandeur or whatever of The Great Gatsby. But for me, in the actual execution, it was just as boring as English class. It was slow. It's a small book that's stretched into a 2.5 hour long movie. And I think, a big part of what the movie is trying to sell is this treat for your eyes. It's in 3D for some reason, because even though it's The Great Gatsby, it has all these colors and these helicopter shots and zooms in from across the lake and all this stuff that I never bothered to visualize when I was reading Fitzgerald. And I just felt like it got distracted by its own prettiness or how it, there's the one scene of Leonardo DiCaprio throwing his silks or whatever over the balcony to Carey Mulligan. It's 5 minutes of him tossing different colored clothes.
I completely understand what you're talking about, because in the scene where Tom is in his other apartment and brings Nick there, it's just, maybe 5 minutes of just pretty people.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of montages. Oh, there was so much partying going on. Gatsby was in all the newspapers. But when you actually do get a scene in this movie, a scene where the characters sit and talk, it goes on for a really long time, and I think that's them being faithful to the text for the most part. You know, they let those scenes play out, and I do feel like, you know, if you know the story, you'll see it pretty much all represented on screen. They did a pretty good job with actually adapting it, but they didn't necessarily fill the whole movie with the book, and they tried to do it a little bit through voiceover and narration, and they tried to do it a little bit by making Nick Carraway somebody who types as a form of therapy, as under recommendation from his psychiatrist or something. And it was smart in a way that it let them actually use some of Fitzgerald's words.
But bringing in a psychiatrist is a cop-out.
Well,
Huge cop-out.
Honestly, kind of tying that all together, I feel like Baz Luhrmann, he wanted to make this accessible to a larger audience, not just those who are fans of the book, because I didn't have to read it in English class. I guess I was in the mediocre English class, so they didn't make me read that. But I did read it last summer, and it was extremely faithful to the book, almost to a fault, I think. But
Right.
I feel like Luhrmann did it in a way, the way he shoots stuff is kind of cartoonish. And it's very big on spectacle. And I think he did a really good job of showing us how Nick saw Gatsby through his eyes, because you saw the grandeur and the colors and the millions of silk shirts for 10 minutes. But yeah.
If I remember correctly, one of the really big things about the book was the fact that here is this portion of society, this group of people, this population that is all about all of these big parties and drinking, and then not talking about things that are actually happening in their lives. That was a really big part of society in general for a really long time, and I think that really got it across. And yeah, it was long, but I was actually understanding the book a lot more, because when I had read it, I had a really difficult time getting into it, and there was a lot that I had a hard time visualizing. And I had only seen the 80s movie that they had made. I'd only seen like the first 10 minutes of that, which also had voiceover, which also did a lot with the colors, but it wasn't nearly as vibrant because, I mean, there was only so much you could do at the time. But when I was watching it, I felt like I understood a lot more of what was going on, and I could understand why other people thought that book was just so amazing.
Right.
You know, going back to Devin's point about being faithful to a fault, I think the whole text thing with the typewriter and the voiceover, both of them together was too much.
Yeah.
You know, it's
The typing I can agree with.
like, you know, they tell you in screenwriting all the time, you should show, not tell.
Yeah.
And, you know, that was like the cardinal sin of this rule. You know, like, when you adapt something like a comic book, for instance, you cut out things that won't work on screen. Yeah. It's great that they want to use Fitzgerald's words. He was great with words. We all know that. But if we wanted to really get into his words, we'd read the book.
Yeah, they're adapting it for a different medium without making the sacrifices necessary for adapting it for a different medium.
And that led it to
Sometimes-
being bombarding. With
Yeah.
the visuals and the text together, I felt like it was too much.
Did you guys have any takeaway from some of the modernization of the book? I mean, they did set it pretty much in the period, but you have modern music, the soundtrack with Jay-Z, Kanye West, Lana Del Rey. But you also had just this general attitude of openness, I guess, in the parties that you wouldn't get in a classic period piece.
There was one instance where they're driving across one of the bridges where one of the cars is blasting Jay-Z. And I'm just
remember
like,
that.
are you kidding me? Like, I was really looking forward to the soundtrack of this movie because I really like the soundtrack of Baz Luhrmann's other movies, you know, and the way, in Moulin Rouge especially, when he takes old songs and mashes them up with new songs, or makes new contemporary songs, you know, sound old-timey. But it's just like, this time he was just like, all right, Jay-Z, you're producing this movie? Let's use all your friends.
I thought it was good, but I thought, like you said, it was just used too much. I feel like that's a recurring theme with this movie. It was just too much.
There were some songs in there that did include some of the 20s jazz parts in it, which were good, and sometimes
I
they
liked
would
that.
link to it. But I remember you and Devin really got kind of stuck on one of the pieces that was very reminiscent of Woody Allen.
Yeah, I mean, there's this weird homage to Woody Allen that is almost too indirect to be an homage when we meet Gatsby and all the fireworks blow off and they play Gershwin.
Right.
And it's the opening of Manhattan without really feeling like the opening of Manhattan for any reason. So if it was an homage, it's a really strange homage, and if it's not, it's just stealing. But I don't know. As far as the music is concerned, for me, the big problem was that I just couldn't separate the two. It's like casting somebody who's too famous in a role where you have to believe there's someone else. It just took me out of the movie. Not to mention the 3D, which, I mean, the only instance of good 3D I can think of is Avatar, but I did not think this was necessarily beautiful 3D. It just distracted me. Just, hey, look, there's snow flying at your face type of stuff.
The first couple seconds when the 3D did turn on and it was those opening credits, my mind immediately went to the first BioShock.
Yeah.
The way that they executed the 3D, like things coming at you and the resolution of they're supposed to be going for that flaky black and white sort of slide or whatever, and I just kept thinking, okay, is this whole thing going to look like BioShock?
On the infamous Pretentious Film Majors 5-star scale, Izzy, what do you give The Great Gatsby?
Well, I know I liked it a lot more than you guys did. I want to give it a 3.5 or a 4, and initially I was going for a 4. But now I'm hearing your opinions.
We've broken her.
Don't subject yourself to peer pressure.
She's a
It's okay.
freshman.
I'm sorry that I can actually enjoy things. I'm gonna stick with my 4.
It's cool. You like liking things.
cool.
I get it.
I want to like something for once.
Ben?
Well, I like to not like things. No, I'm just kidding. No, there were times that I enjoyed it, but there were more times that I disliked it. So I'm going to have to give The Great Gatsby a 2.5.
Devin?
I'm also going to have to give it a 2.5. I kind of want to give it a 2, honestly. It just dragged out. It was just too long. I've never thought I would want to see Leonardo DiCaprio die, but I read the book, so I was like, okay, once they...
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler! I was like, okay, once they get him.
All right. I'm going to give The Great Gatsby a 2 out of 5, and I really feel like even with the 3D, I want to give it a 1.5, but I'll be a little nicer. But that's
Sticklers.
a 4, a 2.5. Was it a 2.5 or a 2 from you?
We're just going to give it a 2. I'm
And
sorry.
another 2
Bunch
from
of
me
angry people.
for The Great Gatsby. For more from the Pretentious Film Majors, stay tuned to our YouTube channel and subscribe above me. Also, you can follow us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, or go to pretentiousfilmmajors.com for more info on our show.